It's a big week for Houston and Philadelphia. These cities are going at it on the baseball diamond, and tonight, under those prime time lights. The Birds flew south with one goal in mind, moved to 8-0 for the first time in franchise history. The offense is rolling, the defense is stopping everyone in its way. While Hurts put on for his hometown of Houston, it's Thursday night football. The Birds and the Texans. Welcome to the Kickoff Show, presented by Little Caesars. I'm Ella DiGiovanni, joined by Fran Duffy. Feels like we're just here talking Steelers.
Yeah, it feels weird for us. You know, it feels weird for the team flying down to Houston and getting ready to play this game on a short week, 2 games in 5 days, but a little bit of a break here. You get a little mini bye after this. So the Eagles not playing again until Monday night, but still got to win this game. Let's move to 8-0.
Well, following Sunday's win against the Steelers, Nick Sirianni already had his guys in recovery mode. The staff brought bikes into the locker room post-game. Media and all, the players were biking away before even getting out of their uniforms. These locker room shots are a social spotlight presented by Pond Lahaki, friend. Check this out. They didn't skip a beat.
No, I mean, you and I didn't get on the bikes and get ready for the kickoff show, but I think when you look at having that short week, you're looking for every edge you can get, every little advantage. And remember, too, with the Eagles having such a dominant win over the Pittsburgh Steelers last week at Lincoln Financial Field, a lot of the starters, Jalen Hurts included, got to take that fourth quarter off. And so also able to get that little bit of a head start for this short week on Thursday night.
There's a lot of confidence around the building this week in the way that they've prepared for tonight. So excited to see how it all kind of comes to fruition. As we see the team take the field for warm-ups here, let's rewind and take a look at the Eagles' schedule leading up to Thursday night football. They had a Week 7 bye, followed by a win against Pittsburgh, and then a quick turnaround to Houston tonight. Sirianni explained how the bye played a big role in the short week.
So we had a unique situation this year where we had our bye week not too long ago, right? That's pretty unique, and we were able to get a lot of that work done. We were able to get a lot of that work done on during the bye week, and then obviously we're doing things a little bit differently this year as far as how we're going about our process this week. And so it was a group effort by everybody because we had a little bit extra time, and then so everybody was able to still do all their parts of the research for this week.
The Eagles are 7-0 for just the second time in team history. Sunday was a huge day for the Eagles offense. Fran, how do you see their weapons finding similar success against the Houston defense tonight?
Well, there are some similarities between what Houston does and what Pittsburgh did a week ago. But real quick, Ella, the thing that stood out most to me about this Eagles offense was how well orchestrated that game plan was coming out of the bye week. You watch here against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you saw all kinds of change-ups off of all of the Eagles' core concepts offensively. You saw fake screens to Dallas Goedert that resulted in touchdowns. You saw fake quarterback sneaks that were actually little flip passes to Miles Sanders in the flat running for a first down. All those little change-ups kept the defense off balance, and Houston's watching that now. That doubt creeps into their mind here every third down, every red zone play. What exactly are we going to see? We've always talked about all the layers to this offense. Well, that was another peeling layer off that onion last Sunday against Pittsburgh. That was what stood out most to me against the Steelers.
They're third in the NFL in total offense, most yards per game in the NFC, and it starts with Jalen Hurts. He's Houston born and raised, and so here's what he had to say about returning to his hometown for the first time as a pro.
Going back to Houston, it should be fun. It's always been a dream of mine to play in NRG Reliant Stadium, and I've spent a lot of time in that city. My childhood, growing up in Houston, going to watch the Texans play, being in the Texans facility as a kid, going to watch high school, playoff games in that stadium, and not having the opportunity to ever play in it. So I have an opportunity this week, and I'm looking forward to playing back home. It'll be fun.
Not surprising for him that this week he was calling it just a business trip. He wasn't letting the emotions get wrapped up into the week, but he's going to want this one, and he's going to want it big.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit extra juice, right? Especially knowing you've got that big crowd with you, your friends and family here at the game. But I think when you look at Jalen Hurts, there is going to be potential for big plays against this Houston secondary. We're going to get into one of their top coverage schemes. They play a lot of cover two. We'll touch on that later in the show. But when you look at how often they give up explosive plays, Ella, they are one of the worst in football, especially when they are playing zone coverage. So I think when you look at the Eagles here in this game, the potential there for a big night for Jalen Hurts.
Well, another matchup to look for is the run game. Since Jalen Hurts became the starting quarterback in Week 14 of 2020, the Eagles have led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. That's great news for the running backs tonight as they face a defense that has allowed the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL over that span. So last week, we saw them get it done through the air. A career day for Jalen Hurts with 4 passing touchdowns. Do you think they'll rely on the run game today?
Well, they certainly have the ability to do that, and we know that this Eagles offense, they're a equal opportunity run team. They will run against anybody, but if you struggle to stop them, you know there's blood in the water. They've got that ability to gash you up front. Now, Houston, these last few weeks especially, I mean, they are on like a historic pace, Ella, and not in a good way. They are giving up a boatload of yards on the ground. They got decimated by Derrick Henry a week ago. The week previous, the Las Vegas Raiders were absolutely able to gash them on the ground as well. And where they're really struggling, Ella, is those gap schemes, those downhill power, counter, duo, the trap plays, anything where you see offensive linemen pulling up to the second level. Think of Landon Dickerson on power plays, or you get Jason Kelsey or Isaac Sayamalu pulling up to the second level. Those are the concepts where the Houston Texans have really struggled. We know those concepts are in the Eagles playbook, so keep an eye out for some of those big runs tonight and see who's pulling out in front for this Eagles offensive line.
As we bring in these offensive starters, let's dig a little deeper into Miles Sanders. 431 rushing yards after contact. Why is that important? Because the Texans have allowed over 1,000 rushing yards after contact this season. So there's a huge mismatch here. So will Miles Sanders, along with Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell, be able to capitalize on the ability to find yards after the carry? That's going to be interesting to watch here tonight.
That's absolutely an area where they can feast here on this Houston defense. Miles Sanders is having one of his best seasons at creating those yards after contact. And Houston, I mean, they benched their one free safety, Jonathan Owens, last week. They had to bring him back because the backup, Eric Murray, was struggling. They've had issues at linebacker. They cut one of their starters, Kamu Grugier-Hill, last week after he asked to be released. They put a rookie third-round pick in. He struggled a little bit. So you look at the rotation at the second and third level, all those missed tackles. It's no wonder this is one of the worst run defenses in football.
Last week was certainly the A.J. Brown show. 3 touchdowns on the day. Now, the Texans defense has only allowed 5 passing touchdowns to opposing teams this year, just 2 to wide receivers. Do you think the Eagles will challenge their passing defense tonight?
Yeah, I think they could. You know, we talked about the explosive plays that they've given up, so I think some of those explosive plays have gotten you down to the goal line, and then they push it in with the run game. But when you look at A.J. Brown, we know that he has been successful against really any of these defenses. But, Ella, I know one thing that stood out to me about A.J. Brown going back and watching him a year ago, he absolutely crushed those division opponents. So playing for the Tennessee Titans, going up against Houston and Indianapolis and Jacksonville, he did absolute work against those defenses. He's very familiar going up against this team. But then also, when you look at Devontae Smith, that's a matchup I'm excited to see, is Devontae going up against Derek Stingley Jr., the starting corner for the Houston Texans, first-round pick, 3rd overall pick this past year out of LSU. He and Devontae had excellent matchups when those two were at Alabama and LSU. Those two schools playing Saturday, in fact, over for college football. But I think when you look at Devontae Smith, Derek Stingley, I know we broke that one down on the Journey to the Draft podcast, and you and I, we're on that podcast every week looking through those college matchups. Devontae, Stingley, that was an all-timer.
Those SEC boys, they never let it go, right? They're going to take that right to the field tonight. But when you mentioned Devontae Smith, it's another case of pick your poison. The Houston Texans are game planning for A.J. Brown, no doubt, especially the way that he went off on Sunday. So is it an opportunity for Devontae Smith? And then the way when you factor in Dallas Goedert, as we're looking at him right here, and we know what he can do after the catch, he's another guy this defense is going to have to look out for.
They've actually been pretty successful at stopping the throws in the middle of the field, Ella, but I think with Dallas Goedert, a couple of the passes he caught last week against the Steelers were those little corner routes, those sail routes along the sideline. Don't be shocked if he catches a couple of those and maybe one for a big play or two here in this game, because that's a soft spot in that zone coverage where Goedert can really threaten.
When we talk about the opportunities in the ground game tonight, we, of course, have to look at the Eagles' offensive line. Another healthy week for this group. They will be major contributors to getting the ball down the field tonight.
Yeah, and we've talked the last few weeks about how teams have really kind of upped their blitz percentage. We saw that last week. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they were middle of the pack blitzing going into that game. They blitzed 60% of the time when Jalen Hurts dropped back to pass. So I think when you look at the Texans, look, Lovie Smith, he is a pure like Tampa 2 4-man rush. That is what he wants to do, and that has held out. The numbers have bore that out so far this season. They're 26th in blitz percentage. They're only middle of the pack, like 15th, 16% or 16th ranking in the NFL in stunt percentage. So I think when you look at Lovie Smith, they're probably not going to send extra rushers, but at the end of the day, you look at this Eagles offensive line against that four-man rush for Houston. They've been banged up with injuries. I think this is a matchup the Eagles easily can win, but you still have to go out and execute.
It was funny last week. The Eagles had such an explosive performance on the offensive side of the football. In the postgame show, we talked so much about the defense, the way that they were able to shut down the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tonight could be a big night again for the defense. Texans quarterback Davis Mills has just one win as a starter. They're down their top two receivers. So as we bring in these defensive starters, there's a lot to unpack here when you talk about this matchup.
Yeah, we talked about the change-ups that the Eagles offense had, and defensively, I thought we saw some new wrinkles as well. One of the things that really stood out, the very first third down of the game, you saw that sack from Hassan Reddick. That was from a really unique front, Ella, where you had Hassan Reddick lined up inside, Brandon Graham inside, Fletcher Cox was lined up as a defensive end, and it was a three-man stunt. Now, the Eagles going into that game against the Steelers, they were the lowest team in the NFL in terms of how often they ran those stunts. So was that game plan specific, getting ready for that Pittsburgh offensive line, or was it a sign of more things to come? The Eagles had 2 sacks off of stunts a week ago. I wonder if that's a bye-week adjustment. Will we see more of them? Will Robert Quinn be introduced in some of those packages because he has been so good running stunts in the past? That's something I'll be watching with these edge rushers, because Reddick, we know he can line up all over the formation and create havoc as a pass rusher. Robert Quinn absolutely has that potential as well. So that's something to watch here early on in this football game.
Hi, Hassan. How you doing? Hope you have a great night tonight. We mentioned the absences of wide receivers Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins. As if the Eagles DBs couldn't be dominating the NFL enough, they're going to have their way with what's left of Davis Mills' weapons tonight, Fran.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, no Nico Collins, no Brandon Cooks. So what does that mean? Well, you're going to take on a receiving core with really only 3 guys that have NFL experience. You're going to have Philip Dorsett, former first-round pick. He is a pure speed threat. Chris Moore has been around the league for a few years, a former 4th-round pick out of Cincinnati. And then Tyron Johnson and Jalen Camp on the back end of that depth chart. Now, you may look at that as an Eagles fan and say, all right, Eagles win that matchup on the outside. But keep in mind, go back to a week ago, getting ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We talked about how the Steelers had a very defined identity as a pass game. All those receivers, they were like top 5 in the NFL in terms of go balls. They worked often down the field. There was a route that Deontay Johnson ran. Darius Slay ran that route better than Deontay Johnson, nearly picked it off. It would have been one of the best interceptions of the entire season in the entire NFL. It was a great read by Slay, and you know that comes from film study, understanding, hey, you know what, I've seen this receiver run this route time and time again on film. Now, going into this game, you haven't seen a lot of Philip Dorsett. You haven't seen as much of Chris Moore. You haven't seen as much of Tyron Johnson. And so all those mental Rolodex reps that you have in the memory bank from your film study, those are non-existent. So that's something you might see Houston try and take advantage of in this game. But at the end of the day, Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, they've been so good. I would not expect that to change here on Thursday night.
Such a great point. Those 2 wide receivers for Houston to now look out for are Chris Moore and Philip Dorsett. Like you said, they've combined for less than 200 receiving yards. But you have a point in saying that there's not much film on what they've done within this Texans offense. In the same breath, Darius Slay and James Bradbury are veteran corners. So they have the eyes. They know how to get in the minds of these wide receivers. The way they've been able to shut down some of the biggest wide receiver weapons in all of the National Football League this season have been so impressive. And I expect to see that carry over here tonight as well.
Yeah, and we talked about it. It's only 4 receivers deep, and the Houston Texans already were what we call a base personnel offense, where they want to play with a lot of tight ends. They're going to put a fullback on the field. So only 1 or 2 receivers on the field at any given time. Anyway, my guess is we'll see an uptick in those personnel groupings with no Cooks and no Collins.
Well, Damien Pierce, he's been the engine for Houston's offense. 539 yards on the ground as a rookie. This D-line is going to have to be ready for his motor. What kind of pressure do you think they need to bring to prevent Pierce from just having a night?
Well, Pierce is a guy that I think when you look at the way that he wins, he is a contact runner, and that I mean that as an term of endearment. He is outstanding at running through first contact, breaking tackles. He does it at a higher rate than basically anybody in the NFL, and the Eagles will have to keep him grounded, but you got to do that without Jordan Davis. No number 90 in the middle of this defense this week, Ella.
You mentioned Jordan Davis. He hit the IR earlier in the week. So now another opportunity for guys like Marlon Tuipulotu and Milton Williams to step up. What do you expect to see from their roles tonight?
Yeah, I think when we know the Eagles go into those 5-man fronts, and that's where Jordan Davis typically has played, on the nose in those looks. Now, some of those looks have been nickel packages with 5 DBs on the field in more passing situations. Some of them have been in base defense with 3 linebackers on the field. I think we'll probably see a mix mix of both Marlon Tuipulotu and Jordan Davis and Javon Hargrave in there. Remember, Hargrave played that role a year ago in this defense. He was the nose tackle playing over the center. I think you'll still see Marlon Tuipulotu mix in, probably more of those rundowns, Hargrave and more of the passing downs. Also remember, the Eagles were able to elevate Marvin Wilson, the second-year defensive tackle out of Florida State. Also, a homecoming for him, Ella. He was the #1 recruit in the entire nation as a defensive tackle coming out of Episcopal High School in Houston. So a little bit of a homecoming there for Marvin Wilson.
This is why everyone needs a Fran Duffy. He's pulling out where this kid went to high school, how many stars he was recruiting.
Five-star recruit. Journey to the Draft podcast, wherever podcasts can be found.
All right, we're going to get back on track. Veteran Brandon Graham, he knows how to operate on a short week, right? So he spoke to the media earlier in the week about preparing for this quick turnaround.
It's never really the physical part of it. I mean, I feel like we always get our body backs around Thursday anyway, but it's more mental. It's about the game plan, carrying out the game plan. So just making sure that you don't have no hiccups there, because that's what can get you beat for real. On top of, not making the plays when your plays come to you. And some of I don't think it's going to be a problem, because they really do hone in on just knowing making sure you know what to do. And, you're taking care of it this week. No, not really nothing stressing us other than just making sure we're paying attention to the details when we're out there at practice. So, yeah, I think it's more mental than it is physical.
Without Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins, it's going to be a heavy workload for Damien Pierce, which it already has been through these opening weeks of the season. So tackling is also going to be a key for the Eagles defense tonight. Well, good thing TJ Edwards and Kaiser White have been outstanding tacklers through 7 games, Fran. What do you expect to see from them as they're preparing for the threat of Damien Pierce, knowing that Davis Mills doesn't really have too many weapons to throw to? Well,
to quote our friend Ike Reese, you got to buckle your chin strap when you're going up against Damien Pierce. You have got to get this guy to the ground. And to paint the picture for Eagles fans that have not watched much of this Houston run game, I will say right now they rank 2nd in the NFL in yards after contact per rush. So that is a Damien Pierce stat through and through. He is creating yardage for himself running through first contact. Again, the Texans 2nd in yards after contact per rushing attempt. Now, when you look at the other side of the coin, they are dead last in the NFL, Ella, in yards before contact per rush. So this offensive line not creating any movement, but TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, Marcus Epps, Avonte Maddox, CJ Gardner-Johnson, the middle of that defense, they have got to be great at getting him to the ground. He breaks tackles as well as anybody. That linebacking group, they've been so exciting to watch over the first several weeks of the season, the way that they've developed, and they've become such an integral part of this defense. James Bradbury, Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Marcus Epps, they get so much attention, and of course the guys up front for what they've been able to do. But that linebacking core, they are so critical, especially when you're facing a good running back like Damien Pierce. And not just the run game, Ella, but this week here on Eagles Game Plan, we actually talked about Davis Mills. He loves to, this is the Houston quarterback, loves to attack the middle of the field, especially off play action. Well, one stat that Ben Fennell was able to dig up, and we used it on the show, was that the Eagles defense right now, they have the best number against opposing quarterbacks, enforcing just a 57.1 completion percentage between the hash marks. That is #1 in the NFL. The Eagles have really locked down that area of the field, and that's an area where Davis Mills likes to attack off-play action. So that is TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, CJ Gardner-Johnson, that whole group there, right up the spine of the Eagles defense. They've done a great job, not just against the run, but namely against coverage as well. We've been in the weeds here, digging through every unit, every matchup to look for tonight. But if we zoom out, what are the 3 things to watch for Eagles fans? Yeah, I think the 3 things, we got to start #1 with what we just finished talking about, and that's stopping Damien Pierce. No Cooks, no Collins. They are going to need to run the football. Don't let them get going on the ground. So stop Damien Pierce, #1. #2, I think when you go to the other side of the football, I talked about the rotation at linebacker. No matter who's been in the game for them, they have really struggled. And I think the Eagles offense has really, really excelled at putting linebackers' minds into a soft pretzel, getting them going one way and going back the other. The run game, the play action, the RPOs, the screen games, the motions, the misdirections, all the different formations, everything you can do to distract those linebackers, the Eagles will have that at their disposal here in this game. And then #3, look, let's make no bones about it. The Eagles are expected by basically everybody to go down and win this football game. The only thing that can be an equalizer is those self-inflicted wounds. So whether that's on offense, defense, special teams, you want to eliminate missed tackles, don't turn the ball over, no special teams miscues, don't let Houston hang around and give them confidence, put them away, take care of business, go home 8-0.
Let's check in with Eagles insider Dave Spadaro, shall we? He joins us live from Houston. Dave, welcome on in. In what ways did the team prepare on such a short week, and perhaps what types of challenges did the quick turnaround present them?
Yeah, Ella, it really started after the Steelers game, immediately after the Steelers game, in the locker room, stationary bikes, massage tables, leg compression units, cold tubs. I mean, it was all about recovery. So from a physical standpoint, it really started them. And then 3 days of walkthroughs, cramming the game plan and the situations into only a couple of days of meetings. So I feel the energy here. I feel like the Eagles are in a good place physically, and certainly from a mental standpoint, I don't think there's any concerns. There are so many Eagles fans here. There's only honestly a couple dozen Houston Texans fans here at NRG Stadium. So I really, again, will give credit to the fans. A lot of energy here, a lot of positive energy, and that has helped the Eagles, who have understood from the very start that this is what they were going to. It helped them getting the game plan going, that they could do it during the bye week. So I really don't anticipate a problem tonight. The Eagles coming in here, with the exception of Jordan Davis and Josiah Scott, healthy, and I feel like there's a lot of bounce in this football team right now.
Well, against Pittsburgh last Sunday, the Eagles scored at least one touchdown in each of the 4 quarters. How can they build on that consistency here tonight?
I mean, isn't that what we've been looking for the entire season? The Eagles have been so good in the second quarter of games, but on Sunday against Pittsburgh, they put it all together with the touchdowns in all 4 quarters, and I really think that the approach today is really going to read on what the Texans are doing. If the Texans are loading the box, you're going to see the air game, and A.J. Brown has had 3 of the best games of his career here at NRG Stadium. 18 catches, 340-plus yards, and 3 touchdowns. He loves playing here. The Eagles have a great matchup there. So the only area that the Eagles must make sure they have nothing blown, special teams. Houston, a pretty good special teams unit. Eagles have given up some plays in special teams. Got to make sure that they are tight in all areas on special teams. And otherwise, come out and play at a high tempo. Look, I said it last week, maybe a little bit of tempo football just to make sure that the blood is going and that everybody's on point offensively.
That was Eagles insider Dave Spadaro live from Houston. Thanks, Dave. The Kickoff Show is delivered by Little Caesars, proud partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Order online during the Pizza pregame and get it delivered or pick up in store in the Pizza portal. Pizza. All right, Fran, the Rico extra point. What do you got for us?
So for me, obviously, look, when you look at this Houston Texans defense, Dave talked about the ability to create some of those big plays through the air. Now, Lovie Smith, head coach and defensive coordinator for this Texans team, he came up with Tony Dungy and the Tampa 2 defense. So they play a lot of cover 2, more cover 2 than anybody in the NFL. So that begs the question, what is cover 2? So let's go real quick tutorial on this cover 2 scheme with the Texans. Again, they run it more than anybody. Now, it's going to start with 2 deep safeties splitting the field in half down the field. So you got those 2 deep safeties, Jalen Petrie and Jonathan Owens. Underneath that, you've got 5 underneath zone coverage defenders. That includes those corners. They're going to play a cloud technique, defending the run on the outside, and you have just a 4-man rush. So 4-man rush, 5 guys underneath, 2 deep safeties. Now, just like every zone coverage, there are holes that you can attack. Deep middle of the field, you're going to have that middle linebacker running the seam, but if you get a receiver or Dallas Goedert running down the seam with that linebacker, you like that matchup. Then you have that area between the corners and the safeties, Ella. It's November, it's turkey time. That's called the turkey hole. You got the underneath, all of those RPOs, screen games, quick game routes, all of those routes are at your disposal as well. Now, obviously, when you've got 2 high safeties, that means you have a light box. When you've got those 6-man looks, this Eagles team can feast on this run game as well, with being able to move the ball with Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell. And so really, look, cover 2, there are a lot of different ways you can attack it. There are pros and cons to it, just like every coverage scheme. There's no perfect defense in football, but run game, pass game, opportunities galore here for this Eagles defense.
Were you on the X's and O bike on Sunday? No short week for you, friend.
Just trying to flex all those muscles, right?
Well, Eagles fans, the midterm election is right around the corner. Now is the time to create your game plan to vote on November 8th. Text Eagles to 26797 to check your voter registration status. This year, voters will have the chance to elect officials to the U.S. House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, and many local and state positions. You can vote in person, by mail, or at a secure ballot drop box. If you are registered to vote in Philadelphia County, you can drop off your ballot at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday, November 6th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our democracy is only as strong as our commitment to participate in it. Go Birds and go vote. Well, that'll do it for us, Eagles fans. Please join myself, Fran Duffy, and Ike Reese on the post-game show immediately following the game. Hopefully, when we see you there, the city of Philadelphia is 2-0 against Houston tonight. We'll provide instant analysis and stream live press conferences from Sirianni, Hurts, and many others. Will running backs carry the weight tonight? Can the defense put a stop to dangerous Damien Pierce? It's almost time for kickoff. Thanks so much for watching the Kickoff Show presented by Little Caesars. Enjoy the game and go Birds.